Emma, you said in a prior interview about I Am Breathing that upon watching the film, a writer from The Telegraph proclaimed how a dying man taught me to live. So, Louise, tell us about your life with Neal, your life with Oscar, how this film came about.
Well, Neal and I were very happy. We'd only just had Oscar in 2007, and then in the August of 2007, and then I think it was in October that Neal came home one day, and he was aware that he had a strange limp. Strange because it wasn't connected to any pain in any way. So we sort of thought maybe he needed a new pair of shoes. We went out, bought him a new pair of shoes, and then Monday morning the same thing happened. And that day he sort of came home and immediately took off his socks and shoes and had a good look, and we realised that he couldn't lift his big toe on one foot as high as he could on the other foot, and that was the beginning of it really. So slowly from then it crept up his body. So Oscar was only 2 months old at that first symptom, and then it slowly, or rather quickly actually, took hold of him, and he died when Oscar was 18 months old.
And I understand, was that February, was it 2007 that the incident happened with the foot? And
no, that would be October 2007, and Neal died February 2009. Yeah.
Wow. And my understanding was that it was so quick that by Christmas, was it? He was using a walking...
By Christmas he was using a walking stick, and really finding it quite difficult to walk. He described it as a waddle. He had to kind of roll his hips around to be able to walk. And I know by April, I think he was in crutches, and then June or July, he was in a wheelchair pretty much full time. And then I think it was somewhere between July and the beginning of September he began to need to use a ventilator to assist his breathing, and then by November, I think, of that year, he was on the ventilator as life support. He was needing it 24 hours a day. He would really struggle when changing and cleaning the mask, if it was any more than about 40 seconds in changing the mask. So, and he'd also, by November, he'd lost the ability to move his arms as well. And I think then by Christmas he was also losing the ability to hold his head up. So his head was we had to support his head all the time as well. So by the time he died in February, he really had practically no movement left apart from his lower jaw and his eyes and the expression on his face.
And I understand with MND, which is it motor neuron disease? Is what
we call it motor neuron disease, yes. I think in America and in most other countries actually, I think it's called ALS. And you also know it here as the Gehrig's disease.
I understand, I think in the film he talked about feeling everything but not being able to move, and his mind is intact, so he would have an itch or something and he couldn't.
Yeah, I think unlike other people that are paralysed, he could still feel every single part of his body. And it also became a little bit more sensitive as well, because his hands, because they hadn't been used for a while, the skin would be very sensitive. So I would lift his hand up to feel Oscar's hair, and he would say it just feels like straw in my hands. Those things were really sad, actually. Yeah.
At what point did you meet Emma?
Neal and I had both, we'd met when we were both studying at Edinburgh College of Art, and we had a good friend, Morag McKinnon, and she had just been down to visit us at the house. when Neal put a call out on his blog to say, I need to get this disease out there, I need to talk about it, we need to raise awareness. Anybody that has any contacts in the media, newspapers, anything at all, please come and ask me, please let me speak. And Morag read this blog that he published, and it was really Morag that thought, well, I'm a fiction director, but I do have a good friend, Emma, who had made documentary before, and Morag contacted both of us really, and just set the idea alight. And I think instantly Neal was interested in doing the documentary. You weren't so well, you were interested, but you weren't so.
I think I was probably the most reluctant one out of everybody there. I suppose just because of experience, knowing what an undertaking it is for the family, and just I suppose also wondering whether it was the right thing to do to make a story out of his suffering, really. But it was interesting in a way, because I think the doubts actually, Morag and I talked an awful lot, because we had a long journey from Edinburgh to Yorkshire, where Louise and Neal were living at the time, and every car journey we'd talk, why are we taking the cameras into this house, what's this about? And gradually I think, you know, we uncovered really valid reasons to make the film.
Well, I know that in the film he says that he wanted Oscar, your son, to know who he was, that he had lost his own father and had questions. Yeah. I think that's very valuable, especially coming from myself. I've lost my father, so you don't know who that person is, and it's a huge part of yourself that's missing. But he also had a message for the world. He wanted people, I think, to know not just about the disease, but also to know how fast time moves.
Yeah. I mean, I think it really became a focus for Neal to spread awareness. He was a very driven person. He was a very sociable person, as you can tell from the film. He had a great sense of humour. He realised that he could say, you know, he could spread the word about the disease, and it really became very important to him to do that. And you know, he does say in the film that he felt guilty almost that he hadn't done anything since his father died, up to the point that he was diagnosed. And I think that added to him really wanting to do the documentary and speak about the disease.